Nicephorus, who was a monk of the Holy Mountain, 19th century, no, 18th century, made a collection of, wrote part, a contribution to the Philokalia about prayer of the heart, and in it he talks about various fathers, their lives and how they are examples of it. In fact, he talks about the power of prayer, and I begin with a quote from him. He says, "It is impossible for us to become reconciled and united with God if we do not first return to ourselves, or if we do not enter into ourselves." Here are the examples. The first one he mentions is St. Anthony the Great. And St. Anthony, you may know this story, he was on the Holy Mountain, he was on his mountain with his disciples. And while they were talking, and suddenly he said to one of them, he said, "Quickly, go down to the road that leads to Egypt and take water with you, because there are two monks. One is dead, has died, and the other one is near to death, so get down there as soon as you can." So they got up, and several monks went down, came to the road, and they found one was dead, one young monk dead, and the other one was almost dead, and they gave him water and revived him. They buried the one that was dead, and then they came up to the mountain, to St. Anthony, with the other monk. You might ask, well, you know, how did Anthony know what was happening? How could he see what was going on the road down at the bottom of the mountain? Well, because he was praying. This is the power of prayer. In the spirit, he saw what was happening. And somebody said to him, "Well, you know, why did you not go earlier?" And he said, "Because I was only, what was revealed to me is what I saw. One dead and one alive. And it's God's affair why the first one died. It's not mine." This is important because he's not controlling God. He's receiving, in a sense, a message from God because he is praying the Jesus prayer. So Anthony was always in a spirit of prayer, even when he was talking to people or sitting with people. And so this is a sort of like a reception, I suppose, in this modern age, electronics, where we understand that. It's like a cell phone, a spiritual cell phone that's on all the time. And he's getting messages from God. Nicephorus also mentions Theodosius. Theodosius was the founder of many monasteries in Palestine. In fact, there were over 1,000 monks. And so he was very busy visiting monks, confessing, serving, but all the time he was in prayer. It's said that even if he was in the midst of a crowd, he was still in solitude. He had learnt the prayer to be able to continue, even in being in a crowded and busy situation. So here's another example. I'm going to select a few from this. The next one is Saint Arsenius. Well, we know about Saint Arsenius. He was a solitary, and he hardly ever spoke to anybody, even people who came to visit him, unless he had to. And Saint Arsenius was at the court, imperial court. He was a tutor to the emperor's sons, so he was in, you know, he lived in luxury. And then one day he decided to leave the court, to give up this secular life and become a monk. And he went to the desert. So from, you know, living in the palace with a, you know, fine linen, he's going to live on the ground, lay on the ground on the bare earth or with a rug in the desert. And while he was there, well, first of all, he went to a monastery and he spent some time there. And then a voice said to him, "Arsenius, flee from men if you want to be saved." So he took that as a note that he should become a solitary. So he became a hermit in the desert and he prayed the Jesus prayer. So what's the value of that? The value of that is that people came to him for advice and he was clairvoyant, saying the prayer. So Theodosius in the midst of crowds of people and saying the prayer. Saint Arsenius is on his own in solitary. The next father that he talks about is Paul of Latros. He again lived in a mountain. He lived in a cave in solitude. He prayed and had the Jesus prayer. But then he went down the mountain to monasteries where he was teaching. Teaching people, the monks, how to say the prayer and the power of prayer. So his job was as a teacher. But again, he was still saying the prayer when he was amongst all the monks. There was no difference between whether he was with people or whether he was on his own. He was saying the prayer. So the prayer is achievable even when we live in the world. And the last one, the Saint Paul of Latros, he taught them how to guard the mind to cleanse the heart from evil. And the last one is Agathon, who said that man is like a tree. Physical work, in other words, ascetic work. I'm not talking about daily life work. I'm talking about ascetic work. Prayer, fasting, church services. These are the leaves of the tree. And guarding the heart, though, is the fruit. Now we know in the gospel it says that if a good tree brings forth good fruit. And a bad tree doesn't bring very much fruit of any at all. And what happens to that is cut down. We cannot depend on works. We have to have prayer of the heart. We have to have the fruit. We can go through the whole of life going to church and being pious and being, a decent person, kind, but without any inside prayer. And this is very important. It's God's decision. It's not ours. We can't say, oh, therefore you're not going to heaven. Can't say that. But we are meant to say the prayer because otherwise we do not have Christ in our hearts. And our thinking is always from ourselves. Good works, which are not good because they're purely selfish. Because we thought of doing something instead of asking for prayer. If we want to help somebody on a practical level, we need to pray first. You remember I was saying to you to spend 5 minutes a day saying the Jesus prayer. It's hard. It's difficult to concentrate, to say the prayer, but we need to do it. And I would say do several 5 minutes during the day until it becomes a prayer. Okay, what we're doing is purely a practice run. We're practicing to be able to concentrate on the prayer, which is mechanical, and then later on with God's grace, the gift of God, it will become a part of us. And so somebody like St. Anthony, we say, well, we can't be like that. Yes, we can. There's St. Anthony, Agathon, they all had this prayer continuously working in their heart. And Father Sophrony used to say that when you have the prayer, it's automatic, it works in you. I mean, I don't understand that. That's independent of you. It begins to take over, it becomes a part of the rhythm of your heart. Now that's on a much higher level, but what we can do is the basics, which is to practice it. And it's vital that we do it so that we can live in the world. Especially if you're working with other people, this is important. And you have to advise people, or if you have to make management decisions, you must pray before you make these decisions, so that when the decision is made, it's from the heart and not from our ego. I can solve that problem. So we need to pray, and the Jesus prayer is the answer. And we do not pray for effect. We pray because we want to receive Christ in our hearts. That's why we do it. We don't do it because it have a special effect. It's very mechanical. In fact, in that sense, it's very easy because it's without any emotion. We just say the prayer. We practice for 5 minutes, and then maybe you say, well, I can go a little bit longer, further, take more time. And then you get to a stage where you have to say the prayer. You're looking for an opportunity to, get into the car when nobody's around and sit and just pray, because you need to do it. You get a taste for prayer. And once you do, you have an appetite which is never satisfied. We heard the epistle two Sundays ago now, Ephesians, which it says our hearts must be a habitation for God. That's not allegorical, it's real. Our heart should be a habitation of God. God cannot come and dwell in our hearts unless we pray, prepare, cleanse the heart. That's what the Jesus prayer is for, is to cleanse the heart. And the wonderful thing about it is that when it cleanses the heart, it cleanses the mind. So you can make decisions. If you're working with people or children or whatever, it doesn't matter what you do, you affect the people around you by having the prayer. And as I said last week, you can say the prayer whenever you like. I mean, these days, of course, you can talk to yourself because people are wandering around, you know, with these earplugs in, talking aloud. Saint Ignati Briancinicinos, it says that we should watch and pray. Okay, this is also a very important part of it, is that we need to be attentive. But we're not. We live with scattered thoughts during the day. Everything's scattered. Oh, should I do this? Should I do that? What if this happens? And when we start to pray, it begins to be focused. And then we can really concentrate on the prayer, and then we are receptive to God's voice. Then we can hear God. God will talk to us. I mean, this is a wonderful gift that we're given. But we, unfortunately, instead of watching and praying, we lead a rather scattered life. Inattentive. Guarding the heart. Okay, how do we begin? Well, obviously to say the prayer, but the other thing that to help you is to restrain your tongue. Not to talk all the time. Only talk when you need to. That's very hard. But to be quiet and not to say things unless you really have to do it. And to be quiet and just say the prayer. And this also applies to actually when we restrain peace. Well, it says here, Saint Ignatius says, when you think about God, it drives away the demons. Drives away the demons. You know, in this modern world today, and sophisticated as we all are, we don't really believe in demons. Well, we do in theory. I mean, you can read in the Gospel how Satan tempted Christ in the wilderness, how he cast demons out of people. But do we really believe that? I think we do in theory. When you start the Jesus prayer, you will know by personally. Now, that's not to scare us, but we begin to see things that we never saw before. I don't mean visions, but understanding. Saint Simeon the New Theologian says that when we enter the heart, we experience darkness. Because our hearts are dark, they're not cleansed, they're dirty, so they need cleansing. When we start the prayer, the very beginning, in a practical sense, is purely reciting some words. That's what it is. But later on, we begin to open up. The important thing is that at the judgment, so the fathers say, we will be judged for the sins that we did not confess. And there are sins that we have that we cannot see. But when we start saying the Jesus prayer, it will begin to reveal who we really are. Do we really know who we are? We know who we are in the world. We all wear different masks, social masks, to appear, acceptable to people. But who are we really? We can only know who we really are is through the prayer of the heart, because then it begins to open up. And when the heart is cleansed, then the mind is cleansed. We can think straight, and we think according to what God thinks. This is a wonderful thing about it. And our proof, well, the evidence here, I would think of St. Porphyrius, who says that when you cleanse, through the Jesus prayer, when you cleanse the heart, the eyes of the soul begin to see God. And this is why he lived in a different world. I mean, he could see things, actually, even with his physical eyes as well. But the thing is that he was constant contact with God, constantly. Because the eyes of his heart, of his soul, heart, soul, same thing, were opened. And they're opened by the prayer. So where do we begin? We begin, let's think about if you love purity, this is a quote from St. Isaac the Syrian. If you love purity, in which the master of all can be seen, do not speak badly or listen to gossip. Now there's the starter. Do not talk badly about people, do not listen to gossip. If somebody starts gossiping, you should remove yourself from them. Don't get involved. Somebody the other day was saying to me, well, how do I do that? Because I work in an office and I'm surrounded by it. Well, you have to pray. That's the only way. But do not enter into it, because that you cannot have any peace in your soul if you're involved. and of course talking too much. So he who wishes to see the Lord within himself devises means to cleanse his heart by continuous remembrance of God. Through the clearness of the eyes of his mind, he will behold God at all times. So with the prayer, when it begins to work, and we are restraining our tongue, we're not talking too much, not giving opinions when we don't need to give them, not listening to scandal, then we are open to God to be able to talk to us, and our lives will become different, and it does make a difference. It changes us. The Saint Isaac says, you can't discern deep thoughts if your mind is bemuddled by talkativeness. Now he's talking about monks, that they should be living in silence. But when we think about it, I think it applies to all of us. I mean, obviously we have to speak because we're out in the world. I'm not saying you're not allowed to talk. You don't go around being silent. But you try not to talk idle talk. Pustoi razgovor. We try to avoid that. This is what we must do. And if we hear it, we move away from it. We should be guarding, oh yes, we are enchained by the world and its consolations. You see, we're afraid because we want the consolations of the world. We want spiritual knowledge. We thirst for God, but at the same time, we're really seeking consolation through physical things, entertainment, food, the belly, stimulating conversation. These are consolations of the world which we should avoid. Now, we have to have a balance. Obviously, we cannot suddenly cut off everything and start being spiritual, because I tell you become a very unpleasant person to be around. Nothing worse than somebody being pious in that sense. So, no, you have to modify it. And how do you modify it? You modify it through confession. Each one of us is different. Each one has a different path. We all have the same goal. We're all going in the same direction. I think we're all on the boat. I believe that, actually. Our parish is like a ship. We're on it. Occasionally we sort of lean over the side and almost fall out. We don't. I don't think we do. But it's each one of you is different and individual, and you've been created by God as an individual, but as a person in community. So yes, very important. You're in each one of us is unique. And so we can't use some sort of template, but we have been given through the Holy Fathers the means to realize Christ in our lives. And this is through the Jesus prayer. But if we don't do it, nothing's going to happen. When you start saying the prayer, he's saying that you have to walk with others circumspectly. In other words, you have to walk with other people with caution. This can happen quite easily because you get involved maybe in a group of people, and there's some, it leads to sin, or at least talkativeness. And we in that situation, we should withdraw. The temptation says, well, I do it to be friends. I mean, they're my friends. I love them, so that's why I do it. Well, no, this is wrong, because they don't profit from you, and you don't profit. You see, when we say the prayer, then we profit people around us. Like driving driving, because it is a good opportunity actually to say the prayer. You don't have to switch on the radio. You can start saying the prayer and praying for other drivers. And driving on the road, you're praying for people. And you'll find that everybody starts driving very nicely, politely. You don't see the bad. I've never seen any accidents ever, actually. Only results of them. I never see one. I'm not saying because I'm saying the prayer, but it has an effect when we're all saying it. And we had a Matush today was driving, saying the prayer, and she saw a car.
In front of me it says, do you drive this closely to Jesus? Do you follow this Jesus this closely?
Do you follow Jesus as closely? Yeah. So avoid, yes. It says, walk with others circumspectly. This is Saint Isaac the Syrian. You will not profit them or yourself, for often the soul casts off watchfulness under pretense of love. Yeah, this is a problem. So we should avoid people that are going to distract us, okay, for whatever reason, because we then lose attention, and this is very important. We cannot say the prayer unless we're attentive. So we have to guard our thoughts. It works both ways. When we're saying the prayer, that helps to purify the mind, but also when the thoughts come, which are temptations, we're not discerning, we don't see it. But when we start saying the prayer, we begin to see, oh, hang on, that's not right. That's a temptation. I'm not talking about obvious temptations. I call the subtle ones that we don't see. And so we need to be attentive. The Fathers emphasize this. They call it attentive watchfulness. Our Lord said, watch and pray, so they go together. You have to be watching and you have to be prepared. Bedietelnet. You have to be observant and not be naive either and just say the prayer, not taking notice of your thoughts. We have to deal with them. Avoid idle conversation. Watch over your belly and your sight. Well, with the distractions of sight are enormous today with the internet. I mean, really, it's amazing. It's very, very difficult. And he says, if you cannot be still within your heart, then at least make still your tongue. Okay? So at least we can be quiet. That's something we can do. That's physically possible. To be able to deal with your thoughts, no. That's going to take time, and it's going to take a lot of help from God to have a settled mind. And I've got here questions. What is stirred up in you at the time of prayer? That's a rhetorical question. I expect you to answer because that would be confessional. All right, but what stirs? The moment you start to say the prayer, what stirs up? Think about that. There's always something or things that happen. The moment you want to say the prayer, this will happen. We can modify that with the prayer. You just say the prayer and you fight all the other distractions that come with it. But by doing this, when it comes to having a prayer time, we are prepared. It's like playing a musical instrument. If you practice on and off during the day at different times, or even studying, when it comes to the concert or the performance, you're ready. So our prayer that we do, 5-minute prayer, is not really prayer. It is practicing prayer. But the intention is to receive prayer because it's a gift from God. I mean, there's so much writing about it that it's amazing. Or ask yourself, why am I confused? Why am I confused? What is it that makes me confused? I would say the answer is you talk too much. I think that's a big problem today, and communicate too much. Everybody, Twitter, do you do Twitter? I have a Twitter account. I don't use it actually. To me, it's a menace. So, anything off the cuff, you have to make a comment. Oh, comments, Facebook comments. Who can resist commenting? We used to have a clergy forum. Can't remember the name of it, and I stopped myself doing it because I became cynical. I found I could make quips. I'm good at it actually. This is not good for my soul, so I stopped it. It wasn't appropriate. These are the sort of examples, all right? That's my problem. That's why I'm confused. I stopped doing it though. And St. Isaac says all this is negligence, lack of watchfulness. And he says watchfulness, being attentive, is more than works. No, I don't expect you to take all this in this evening, but we need to think about it. And if you can, to read the Philokalia, certain fathers, not all, there's some that we can't read yet. And just remind yourself of what we're meant to be doing. Watch and pray. It is impossible for us to become reconciled and united with God if we do not first return to ourselves, enter our hearts, or if we do not enter into ourselves. Okay.